This is a valid dialogue. And the brother spent a lot of time talking about how much he knew. And didn't click on me till I saw the movie, and he said them brothers came in from Newark. The brother was talking to Mass, and I couldn't hear him. And he told me that at that mosque, they did a lot of burglarizing, robbing. This brother had went to jail. They had done a lot of killing, burglarizing, robbing, and used the Nation of Islam as the cover for their criminal thing.
The indictment you've just heard is being delivered over and over again in most of the major cities across the country. This charge comes at the climax of a morality play called The Trial. The plot, indeed the message of the play, is that the white man has been put on trial for his sins against the black man. He has been found guilty. The sentence is death. The play is sponsored, produced by a Negro religious group who call themselves the Muslims. They use a good deal of the paraphernalia of the traditional religion of Islam, but they are fervently disavowed by Orthodox Muslims. These homegrown Negro American Muslims are the most powerful of the black supremacist groups. They now claim a membership of at least 250,000 Negroes. Their doctrine is being taught in 50 cities across the nation. Let no one underestimate the Muslims. They have their own parochial schools, like this one in Chicago, where Muslim children are taught to hate the white man. Even the clothes they wear are in sharp contrast to American dress, like these two Negro children going to school. Wherever they go, the Muslims withdraw from the life of the community. They have their own stores, supermarkets, barbershops, restaurants. Here you see a progressive, modern, air-conditioned Muslim department store on Chicago's South Side. Their story of hatred for the white man is carried in many Negro newspapers. Here you see their minister, Malcom X, proudly displaying 5 of the biggest Negro papers in America. Papers published in Los Angeles, New York, Pittsburgh, Detroit, and Newark. Negro politicians, regardless of their private beliefs, listen when the leaders of the black supremacist movement speak. Here you see Manhattan Borough President Hewlin Jack shaking hands with Elijah Muhammad, the leader of the Muslims. And here is City Councilman Earl Brown addressing a Muslim rally. 4 or 5 times a year, the Muslims assemble in one of America's major cities to hear their leader, Elijah Muhammad. This coming Sunday afternoon, they will gather at New York's St. Nicholas Arena to hear it. But here, you see them arriving at Washington's Uline Arena for a meeting they held just 6 weeks ago. Every devout Muslim is eager to attend these meetings. For some time between now and 1970, and at just such a rally as this, the Muslim leader has intimated that he will give the call for the destruction of the white man. As you will see, every precaution is taken to protect their leader at these meetings. The Muslims, both men and women, submit themselves to a complete search before they finally enter the meeting hall. Some 10,000 persons attended the rally that you see here. All of them were searched. That's a search going on here. This process began 3 hours before the meeting started. And shortly, you will see Elijah Muhammad, founder and spiritual leader of the group. His flock is waiting for him now. And finally, here comes their spiritual leader, Elijah Muhammad. He's actually Elijah Poole of Hawkinsville, Georgia. During World War II, Muhammad was arrested and charged with sedition and draft dodging. The Department of Justice finally dropped the charge that he had advocated defeat of the white democracies and victory for the colored Japanese. But Muhammad and his followers did serve time in the federal penitentiary for refusing to register for the draft. Here you will hear Elijah Muhammad introduced by Minister Malcom X, the Muslims' New York leader and ambassador at large for the movement. The good news that Minister X talks about here is the coming rise of the black man and the fall of the white man.
Everyone who is here today realizes that we are now living in the fulfillment of prophecy. Right. We have come to hear and to see the greatest and the wisest and most fearless black man in America today.
And he stuck me on my genitals with that cattle prod. I had never in my life experienced that kind of pain then or since then. Now, I cried not because I hurt. I cry because I'm mad. I'm still mad today.
In 1983, police coerced Daryl Cannon to confess to a murder he didn't commit. They took him to a remote location where detectives played a sadistic, terrifying game of Russian roulette with him. They also repeatedly used a cattle prod on his testicles. Cannon served 24 years in prison before being exonerated in 2004 and released in 2007.
Following this speech, which lasted some 2 hours, Newsbeat reporter Louis Lomax interviewed Elijah Muhammad, the spiritual leader of the Muslims.
Although you have said that the white race is doomed and that they are a race of devils, do you make any distinction? Are there any good white people? For example, suppose I were to ask you whom you think is the best white man. Is there any such thing?
I let the Bible answer that. He says, no, not one is good.
Now, if I have understood your teachings correctly, you teach that all of the members of Islam are God, and that one among you is supreme, and that that one is Allah. Now, have I understood you correctly?
That's right.
Now, you have on the other hand said that Allah has taught you that the devil is the white man, that the white man is a doomed race.
Yes.
Am I correct there, sir?
Yes.
Now you have said, sir, that between now and approximately 1970, there should come a reawakening,
a general resurrection
of the American Negro.
That's right.
And that the extended time for the white man may well run out, and that will come and in terms of a war between God and the devil. This coming destruction of the white man, will there be any bloodshed involved in this, or will it be a complete mental thing?
According to the teachings of the prophets of old and of God himself, there will be plenty of bloodshed. Plenty of it.
Have you ever been accused, sir, of preaching hate?
Yes.
Do you think you are preaching hate?
No.
What are you preaching, sir?
Truth.
And if the truth is irritable or objectionable,
classified as hate, then I cannot help that.
But of even more interest to New Yorkers is Malcolm X, the Muslims' New York minister. He is a remarkable man, a man who, by his own admission, was once a procurer and dope peddler. He served time for robbery in the Michigan and Massachusetts state penitentiaries. But now he's a changed man. He will not smoke or drink. He will not even eat in a restaurant that houses a tavern. He told Newsbeat that his life changed for him when the Muslim faith taught him no longer to be ashamed of being a black man. Reporter Louis Lomax asked Minister Malcolm X to further explain the Muslim teachings of Elijah Muhammad.
that in the same context that Mr. Elijah Muhammad teaches that his faith, that the Islamic faith is for the black man and that the black man is good. He also uses the Old Testament instance of the serpent and Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and he sets up the proposition there that this is the great battle between good and evil, and he uses the phrase devils.
Yeah.
And he uses it almost interchangeably and synonymous with the word snake. Now what does he mean there?
Well, number one, he teaches us that that never was a real serpent.
It was not a real serpent.
That went into the garden.
What was it?
But as you know, the Bible is written in symbols and parables, and this serpent or snake is a symbol that's used to hide the real identity of the one whom that actually was.
Well, who was it?
The white man.
Congressman, I want to return again to the Muslims of whom we spoke earlier. You say you know Minister Malcom X,
Yes.
and you respect him as a very brilliant man.
I think he's a very brilliant man.
They teach, and he said it to this reporter, among other things, that the proper interpretation of the incident in the Garden of Eden is that Adam and Eve were black men and that the serpent was a white man who came in and, to say the least, brought on disquietude, and that the white man is not a devil, but the devil, a snake of the grafter type, and must be destroyed. How does this sound?
I totally disassociate myself from any such belief, just as I totally disassociate myself from the belief of some of my fellow clergymen who preach that there is no room in Christianity for a black man except as a servant and a slave.
But Congressman, in all 20th century seriousness, would it disturb you if the reverse took place, if a white group had such a school and they were teaching their children that Negroes were snakes and devils and should be destroyed? In all seriousness, sir, wouldn't that disturb you?
Oh, it disturbs me that he preaches that kind of doctrine of hate, because I don't nor of any religion that has in it a principle of hatred. There are various degrees of love, but not any degrees of hate.
The man called brilliant at the beginning of that colloquy by Adam Powell, the man who preached a vesper service in Adam Powell's church, this man, Malcolm X, is, as we said, by his own admission, a former dope peddler and procurer, an ex-convict who served time in Michigan and Massachusetts prisons. He is now a changed man, he says, because Elijah Muhammad's personal brand of Islam taught him no longer to be ashamed to be a black man. So it becomes evident that responsible leaders of the Negro community are fully aware of the activities and the teachings of the black supremacists.
I've listened to the Elijah Muhammad movement and the black nationalist movement, and I have heard the NAACP, and I don't feel that the NAACP's views are the way out. I feel that it would be better if it were more national rather than integrated.
And now for our discussion of the hate that hate produced, with me and my colleague Louis Lomax, are 5 distinguished New Yorkers. First of all, Dr. Anna Hedgeman. Dr. Hedgeman is a veteran of 30 years' service as a civil rights spokesman. She served with distinction as an aide to Federal Security Administrator Oscar Ewing and to New York's Mayor Robert Wagner. Dr. Gardner Taylor is minister of the Concord Avenue Baptist Church of Brooklyn, and he is president of the Protestant Council of Greater New York and a member of the New York City Board of Education. Arnold Forster is a seasoned human relations expert, director of the Civil Rights Division of the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith. Jackie Robinson, former Brooklyn Dodgers star, presently a businessman and a columnist for the New York Post, is one of the more articulate and militant Negro spokesmen in civil rights matters. And Roy Wilkins, as we all know, is Executive Secretary of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Most of the far-reaching court decisions won by the Negro people were gained by the NAACP under Mr. Wilkins' direction. That's our panel.
What disturbs me is this. For 3 months, I've been working on a story. I wanted to give you some ideas now of some things I saw while you gentlemen were probably, well, at home. One of Minister Malcolm X's members was picked up 10 blocks from your church. It was a woman. Her husband had been accused of rape, which he didn't commit. It came out. Dr. Taylor, within an hour and a half after this woman was in the precinct in Brooklyn, by a method that has baffled the New York police, Malcolm X had 300 Muslims, some of them from as far away almost as New Rochelle, and threw a cordon around that precinct and brought on a crisis. Now, last week, I think it was, a woman was misbehaving in a restaurant in Harlem. The Muslims had nothing to do with that. The word got out that the police had her and that they had abused her. What happened? In a matter of an hour, 500 people are around a police station. But for Ray Robinson, the case is laid, we're a near riot. Now, you are the sober people, Mr. Wilkins and Mr. Foster. You are the established leadership in Concord Baptist Church. But I've been out rubbing shoulder with a guy, you told me that most of the Harlem leaders, Mr. Wilkins, didn't stand on street corners. I've been out rubbing shoulders with the people who do stand on street corners, and these are the people who wind up around police stations presenting situations. Now, and the point I want to make, and pardon me for being prolix, but I feel rather deeply about this. If people who stand on street corners set off, God forbid, a riot or any confusion, we are just as dead as if it had been set off by Roy Wilkins of the NAACP.
I don't see the point, you see.
Well, the point that I'm trying to make is that...
Wait a minute, let me tell you. 30 years ago, I was a reporter on a paper and did police news. I did a police beat. I sat on Monday mornings with a police judge. I heard the Saturday night arrests. And what you're telling me is old police stuff. Now, I'd like to get to what Mike really wants to talk about, and that is this dangerous, and how can we stop it? Now, let's talk. Is the NAACP on trial here because it hasn't got 4 million members?
No, and a lot of...
All right, well, let's talk about...
All right,
Let's get to what we came to talk about.
With the Catholic president, who himself was discriminated against for a long time and accused Protestants of practicing religious discrimination, I think that he is way out of line to use his position now as the first Catholic president to open up his mouth against a religious group here in this country that is headed by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. If he's not going to open up his mouth and outright condemn the Citizens Council by name, and condemn the Ku Klux Klan by name, and condemn the white Masonic order, which is all white, by name, and the white churches in the South by name, then Kennedy is wrong to point at the Muslims because we are black and because we don't want to mix with the people down there. And I should say that when we express our desire not to mix with whites, they call us a hate group. And Martin Luther King is running around here telling Negroes to love all kind of white people, and they sick dogs on Martin Luther King, so it answers itself.
The man who promised all the American so-called Negroes who vote what he was going to do for them when he got in office, and has yet to do the first thing that he promised, but has paid off the Negro leadership so that they are silent and say nothing about the promises that he originally made to get Negroes to vote for him.
Max, you were involved in a controversy some months ago with your leader. Is that over?
Well, I've been silent for the past 90 days because of some statements I made concerning the President of the United States, which were distorted.
They were distorted?
And yes.
What did you say, Malcolm?
Well, I said the same thing that everybody says, that his assassination was the result of the climate of hate. But only I said the chickens came home to roost, and which means the same thing. Climate of hate means that this is the result of something. And when I said chickens coming home to roost, I said the same thing.
But you did not say that you were glad the president was killed.
No, that's what the press said. What would I look like saying that I'm glad the president was killed?
Malcolm, this was your first public statement in that 90-day period, is it not?
First time I opened up my mouth in 90 days. That's why I'm talking so fast and so hearty.
You feel, however, that we're making progress in this country and worldwide?
No. I will never say that progress is being made. If you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, there's no progress. You pull it all the way out, that's not progress. The progress is healing the wound that the blow made. And they haven't even begun to pull the knife out, much less try and heal the wound. They won't even admit the knife is there.
That the same man was the father of all 4 of their children and had also been the father of the children brought forth by the 2 secretaries who preceded them. So this story was kept among these sisters until 1962. 2 of them rebelled against the person who was responsible,
and began to tell the story all over the city of Chicago. It caused many of the Muslims in the Chicago mosque to leave and go back out in the street. They knew it, and I knew nothing about it until 1963, when Mr. Muhammad's son, who had been in prison, came out, and he had been a minister, and he was very religious and spiritual. And when he began to hear these rumors around Chicago, he went to one of the sisters, and the sister admitted to him that the rumor was true. And it was he who first told me about it. And when he told me about it, I wrote to Mr. Muhammad and told him about it, and he admitted that he had a knowledge of it, and that he'd given me a religious explanation that would fit into prophecy and all of that. So I was quiet. And it wasn't until October of 1963 that it came up again. And when it came up again, I realized that the same person who had made these other sisters pregnant was still busy doing the same thing. He hadn't stopped. Two of the sisters had 2 children by the same man. And one of those 2 sisters was pregnant still, getting ready to have a 3rd child by the same man. So when it was known among the Chicago officials that I had a knowledge of this, they became very fearful of me. They became very antagonistic toward me, and they had to do something to diminish the authority that I had, for fear that if this became public knowledge, the followers would leave the Muslim movement and follow me. And it was at that time that they used the statement that I made against President Kennedy as a pretext to cut my authority, and some other things happened that finally produced the split, or forced the split. And when I made the split, the only reason that I didn't make this public knowledge was I knew the implications, and I felt that if the Muslims who were in the Nation of Islam knew it, that which enabled them to be so strongly religious and exercise moral discipline would be shattered, and it would cause all of them to go right back and start doing the things that they had been doing previously.
Who is the father of all of these various children whom you have enumerated?
The first one to tell me who the father was Wallace Muhammad, and he told me that the father was Elijah Muhammad himself. One of the sisters, he went to the home of one of the sisters, and when he walked in the door, she says, "I want to let you see something." And she showed him her child. She said, "Here's your brother, and your father is the father of this child." And then I questioned the sisters myself, because I was shook up. And they admitted to me that Elijah Muhammad was the father of their children. And I took it to him. And it was at that time he told me that he was Muhammad, the prophet, and that Muhammad had 9 wives. He also told me that he was David. He was the modern David, and that he was the modern Solomon, and that it was meant for him to fulfill today all of the things that they did back there.
And how many of these illegitimate children did he father with the sisters?
Well, he made 6 sisters pregnant. They all had children. 2 of those 6 had 2 children. One of those 2 is having a child right now. I am told that there is a 7th sister who is supposed to be in Mexico right now, and she's supposed to be having a child by him. For one thing, when you first separate from your wife, it's a physical separation, but it's not psychological. You still have feelings for her, and you protect her. But after the physical separation has taken place for a while, it becomes a psychological separation. It was the same way with me in the Muslim movement. When I first separated, it was a physical separation, but my feeling was still there. And it was only after my trip into the Muslim world and my pilgrimage to Mecca that I really was able to exercise the objective approach to it that enabled me to see that something had to be done to bring this to light. Otherwise, a whole lot of innocent people would be killed needlessly.
Well, these revelations that you are now making about Elijah Muhammad, what effect should they have on his following?
Well, I very much doubt that any of his followers who really are aware of what he has done would continue to follow him. He may try and justify it by saying that he's a Muslim, and that a Muslim has a right to these wives. If this were the case, these sisters should not have been humiliated. These sisters have been looked upon for the past 5 years, or 6 years, or 7 years as being guilty of having committed fornication. They have been debased. They have been degraded. I have heard him himself refer to them as having disgraced him. So if they were his wives, he should have given them a position of respect so that all of his followers would respect them, and that they would have the protection of his followers today.
Well, do you feel that you then perhaps now should take over the leadership of the black Muslims?
No, I have no desire to take over the leadership of the black Muslims, and I have never had that desire. But I do have this desire. I have a desire to see the Afro-American in this country get the human rights that are his due. I believe that the Islam religion is the best religion for our people because it creates unity and it gives one dignity and racial confidence and all of these things that are necessary to make a complete human being.
Are you not perhaps afraid of what might happen to you as a result of making these revelations?
Oh, yes. I probably am a dead man already.
What do you mean?
When you understand the makeup of the Muslim movement and the psychology of the Muslim movement, as long as if I myself, by having confidence in the leader of the Muslim movement, if someone came to me and I had no knowledge whatsoever of what had taken place and they told me what I'm saying, I would kill them myself. The only thing that would prevent me from killing someone who made a statement like this, they would have to be able to let me know that it's true. Now, if anyone had come to me other than Mr. Muhammad's son, I never would have believed it, even enough to look into it. But I had been around him so closely, I had seen indications of the reality of it, but my religious sincerity made me block it out of my mind.
Have you received threats on your life?
Oh, yes. I first received threats on my life in December. In December. No, not in December, in January. When it first became known that I had come back to New York and told the captain of the fruit in New York, who was my right-hand man formerly, and also the secretary of the New York Mosque and the minister in Boston. When it became known that I had told them, then an effort was made to shut me up. One brother encouraged to go out to my house and shut me up. And fortunately, it was a brother who was well capable of doing so, but it was a brother who was highly intelligent. He was academically equipped to think for himself. And what he was told to do didn't add up. And fortunately, he was the one who put out a feeler to me to find out what was wrong. And I opened his eyes. And then he opened the eyes of the same crew whose job it is to do this kind of work.
You mean he was going to kill you?
Oh, yes. One of them was, an attempt was made to get one of them to wire my car with an explosive. That one is with me right now. Well, fortunately, while I was among the Muslims, I never lived beyond my means, and I have learned how to live within means. And I still have the clothes that that was provided for me at that time. I'm in the house that was provided for me, although we're in a court battle, they're trying to get it back. And I have made this statement to them concerning the house that they could have it. If they would take me back, that they would permit me to come before the Muslim movement, the rank and file, and explain or defend myself against all of the charges that they've made against me, they could have the house. But they are going contrary to their own laws by standing up in the mosque and indicting me, but never giving me a chance to defend myself. And they say that no one can judge me but Mr. Muhammad. In this case, Mr. Muhammad can't sit as judge because he's involved in the case.
Elijah Muhammad says of the Muslims, we carry no arms, and we do not seek to win victory with arms. We do nothing to others that we would not have done unto us.
The two brothers were sent after me with revolvers by Joseph, the captain of the fruit in New York. They were armed. When a Muslim is attacked, and you'll find this to be the pattern, when the Muslims were attacked in Monroe, Louisiana, Elijah Muhammad gave no signal to anybody across the nation to come to the defense of their brothers. When our brothers were attacked in Los Angeles, again, Elijah Muhammad gave no signal to anybody to come to the defense of those brothers. Never have the Muslims anywhere in the country gotten any kind of instruction from the national office or headquarters on how to defend themselves when they are attacked by outsiders. The only times the Muslims have ever been given any instructions to commit violence is when that violence is directed against a fellow Muslim. His followers are violent against Negroes.
Are you not perhaps afraid of what might happen to you as a result of making these revelations?
Oh, yes.
I probably am a dead man already.
Malcolm went out of the nation, we all were hurt. At least I can speak for myself. I loved him. Next to Elijah Muhammad, I didn't know anybody greater than Malcolm X. It hurt me that he would go out of the nation. But then the worst hurt was Malcolm going to Mike Wallace, telling Mike Wallace, and listen to the words now, Elijah Muhammad fathered children from his teenage secretaries. So Malcolm raised it to a moral issue. Listen to me carefully. Putting himself in the righteous position, putting his teacher in an immoral position, but then he's going to the white man to tell the white man what his leader and teacher had done. He did it with Mike Wallace. You can't deny this. This is actual fact. He came here to Chicago and went to Cups in it. When has Cups in it been to black people? And he told Cup, Elijah Muhammad, I thought he was a man. Father, these children wouldn't, in other words, kept it a secret and whatnot. I found that he was less man than I thought. Oh. He dogged the messenger. The man that took him from a pimp, from a hustler, from a stick-up man, and sent him before the world. Now he's dogging his teacher. What do you think we felt? Elijah Muhammad wasn't just a leader. That's our spiritual guide and father, brother. You don't have to order me to kill you. If you attack my father, my orders come from my love. I want you to hear me good, because every Muslim that loved Elijah Muhammad would have killed Malcolm if we had gotten a chance. No, I don't need no damn applause. I want you to think now. We didn't incite that. Malcolm incited that in us. He would have been dead. He would never have lasted a year. Elijah Muhammad told us, leave him alone. Leave him alone. Told me to my face, leave him alone. Obedient servant. Muhammad enough that if you attack him, I will kill you. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And I'm not a killer, but neither are you. But if somebody attacked what you love, each one of you in here would become a killer instantaneously. Am I lying? Mother, let somebody look like they're attacking your child. Here's a woman who fought a bear because the bear snatched her baby. And she ran the bear down, screaming until the bear dropped her baby. Love casts out fear. We don't give a damn about no white man law when you attack what we love. And frankly, it ain't none of your business. What have you got to say about it? Did you teach Malcolm? Did you make Malcolm? Did you clean up Malcolm? Did you put Malcolm out before the world? Was Malcolm your traitor or was he ours? And if we dealt with him like a nation deals with a traitor, what the hell business is it of yours? future, we're going to become a nation. And the nation got to be able to deal with traitors and cutthroats and turncoats. The white man does deals with his.
I already said, God, Allah is the best knower of that.
Mr. Muhammad, Malcom has said on several occasions, when he was still a very vital member of the Brotherhood of Islam, that you frequently looked into the future and received visions. Did you receive any vision as to the ultimate end that Malcom would meet? Did you have any sort of premonition that Malcom would meet a violent end as he did?
No, I was in hope that Allah would chastise him and bring him back on his knees. That's what I was in hope of.
Were you hoping that he would come back to your...
Well, I knew that would be the ultimate if he lived. There's no other way for him, or nor any other hypocrite.
After a nearly 2-year investigation, 2 of the 3 people convicted in the 1965 assassination of the world-famous civil rights icon, Muhammad Aziz and Khalil Islam, have now been exonerated.
I regret that this court cannot fully undo the serious miscarriages of justice.
Manhattan District Attorney Cy Vance telling a judge after revisiting the nearly 60-year-old case that the FBI and NYPD withheld evidence that may have cleared the 2 men decades ago.
The FBI lied, the NYPD lied, and the DA's office admitted that it also made false statements.
Aziz and Islam were sentenced to life in prison in 1966, along with Mujahid Abdul Halim. Halim confessed to shooting Malcolm X and told investigators Aziz and Islam were innocent, but both men were kept behind bars. They maintained their innocence until Islam was granted parole in 1987. He died in 2009. Aziz also spent 20 years in prison before being paroled in 1985. After today's reversal, questions still linger about the real killers. An attorney representing Malcolm X's daughter now says he wants a congressional review. In Washington, Faith Abube, ABC News.